Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jocelyn King, and I'm your host of the By HR for HR podcast. I'm also the CEO of Virgil HR, an HR compliance software, and I'm joined today by Peter Phelan. Peter, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be here, Jocelyn. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we were just talking before we got started about your experience in human resources, and so I'd love for you to just share with the audience a bit about that, but also some of the unique experience that you have as well.
Oh, perfect. So the quick version is that I didn't fall into HR. I actually studied it in college back in Ireland in the 1990s and then worked in-house for 20 years, kind of moving up through the ranks to chief people officer at a couple of tech companies and enjoyed it a lot, but found the chief people officer role a bit too broad and wasn't maybe necessarily feeling the impact on a day-to-day basis or doing my favorite things. So I took a leap about a decade ago and set up my own company, Values Culture, where I get to do like my favorite 10% of the chief people officer job. And that's meant some culture strategy projects and also headhunting for people and talent leaders, mostly in kind of tech companies, because that's where I had my own kind of good reputation coming out of in-house. But then it became, broader than that, lots of different industries, but still majority tech. And then the unique thing is probably that I've carved out a little bit of a niche as HR's humorist. So I'm lucky enough to speak at conferences and do events and even New York City comedy clubs with that kind of HR shtick.
Very cool. So, how does an audience in New York receive an HR comedian?
I think a little goes a long way. So I also have other kind of things to talk about, like being an Irishman adjusting to life in America, what have you. So for a broad audience, like in a comedy club, I don't like to do too much HR stuff because it's a little bit too inside baseball. But I never make fun of HR. I'm definitely HR positive. So I'll just intersperse a bit of HR with other shtick. But for the HR audiences at conferences or whatever, I can go on and on for half an hour, and usually they're great crowds. They're very empathetic, especially when I'm talking about how crazy our jobs are and the things we see that non-HR people couldn't possibly imagine.
When you are talking to an HR crowd versus a more kind of agnostic crowd, does does your skit, does it shift? Is it more targeted toward? I would imagine, and I'll just say this: I would imagine that if if I was listening to another HR professional tell jokes about just the human resources industry, I'd probably get a kick out of some of the deprecating humor that might come out of it. Is that something that ever happens when you're talking to other HR professionals, or do you like really try and maintain the HR positivity through the whole thing?
I do. I think HR is a tough enough role, often misunderstood, various headlines over the years about why we need to get rid of HR or everybody hates HR. So I really can't bring myself to self-deprecate, even when I don't have to be, let's say, an ambassador with an agnostic audience to your framing. Even if it's pure HR people and we're kind of safe amongst ourselves, it'll still be HR positive. But the deprecation maybe comes from, making fun of things like how other professions think they know HR better,
Oh, sure.
and other functions. So I'll do lots of kind of I did these disrupt HR talks called imposter syndrome, where I actually did impersonations of popular kind of celebrities, some fictional, some real, attempting to do HR work and failing miserably. So I can deprecate others who are kind of think they can do our jobs, but I don't deprecate us.
Okay, fantastic. It's like a CFO, basically. Very cool. So, where do you do these types of well, is maybe skits the wrong word to be calling them? You'll have to correct me. But where are you generally doing these?
So there's a few different fora, whatever the word is. So I've been lucky enough to have kind of an ongoing thing at Transform, that conference in Vegas every March, which is always a lot of fun. And I kind of was early adopter and promoter of Transform, and they've been kind to me ever since. So the last couple of years at the Win, I've been like the last performer on stage before it kind of shuts down, and we move the party to some musical guest at a nightclub across town. So that's been great, to get the mic for 30 minutes of HR comedy at a big conference like that. Smaller settings, we just like random events at, HR organizations or maybe even vendors who want to do something for their clients or prospects. And then a very fun one where we get to kind of invite more people to the mic is a thing called funnyhrpeople.com. It's an open mic for HR professionals. And I do that with a fellow Celt, a guy called Ashley Bendel. He's from Scotland, and I'm from Ireland. I sound almost American now after 30 years. He has a much better accent than I do, and he's quite funny. And we'll MC these events about every 6 weeks in New York for the HR community. And as long as you're an HR person, you can take the mic and tell a story or tell jokes. And they're always funny. There's a lot of fun stories to tell and lots of great, funny HR people. So that's a ton of fun. And Ashley and I really just MC it. We don't even tell that many jokes on those nights themselves because other people have so many great stories to tell.
That's really neat. As soon as you said that, I thought that'd be such a great team building activity to do. Take your team to New York for something like that.
Yeah, well, yeah, some people, I don't know if anyone's brought a team yet, although we'll see what happens. But some New York based companies, the HR leader has taken their team to a Funny People event as an outing, sometimes as a support system if the HR leader is the one taking the mic, or sometimes just for fun.
Very cool. I haven't heard of anybody do that before, but when you mentioned Transform, I thought that was very interesting because I've been every year and I missed you this year, so I didn't get to hear you give your. And you still haven't told me if I can call it a skit or not, by the way.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah. Well, all these different formats. So I guess I do skit-ish stuff with the impersonations and whatnot. So yeah, you can call it a skit. Feel free, Jocelyn. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking it would be kind of fun if, you're doing it at the end of the show is pretty great, but what if you open for Busta Rhyme or Nelly or any of those guys? That would be pretty cool too. So maybe you can convince them to do that the next time around.
Yeah, I'll try. I mean, I've spun it that I'm opening for Busta Rhymes or Nelly, but it's a little bit of a stretch because I'll be at like 4:15 there, at 9 o'clock across town. But technically, there isn't another Transformer event between us. So but yeah, my stretch. It might be nice to de-stretch that into an actual opening, but I don't think I'd get away with a half an hour of HR comedy when people are eager to dance at the end of the night.
True.
But yeah, I'm hopefully next year you could join. We do lose some people. Because it is on the last day and not everybody stays, they catch their flights maybe in the mid-afternoon or late afternoon and they don't go to see Busta Rhymes either. But yeah, hopefully we'll align our calendars next year, Jocelyn.
Yeah, very cool. Hey, Alan, it says app is not focused. Do I need to worry about that? I hope he didn't walk away. Sorry, I'm just getting a message. Okay, perfect. Okay, great. Okay. Well, before we jump into some of the, I guess, more targeted HR questions that I have for you, I think this is important for every HR person to kind of hear. How can we inject some humor into what can be a very stressful environment in the workplace?
Yeah, I'm definitely a fan of that. And there's a longer version answer to that question, which could be a whole podcast in and of itself. Where there's science behind the fact that injecting more humor can not just be a source of kind of tension relief, but it can also accelerate trust with stakeholders, because you're showing your kind of level of expertise by knowing your subject matter well enough and your audience well enough to kind of make light of the situation and see the opportunity to ease the tension, show your expertise at that next level by actually being funny about it. But in general, I think if an opportunity comes up just to, see the impossible situations we're in, the paradoxes, I say, seize it. If you have to make fun of someone, you're probably not on the right track. You can maybe make fun of yourself a little bit. I don't like to make fun of the HR profession, as discussed earlier, and kind of skewering your company is probably not the best idea with the W-2, coming from them. But making fun of a situation, I think is always fair game and can really disperse or get rid of tension in a room.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great point about maybe not making fun of somebody, or kind of a joke at their expense, or even yourself for that matter. My husband gave me really great advice one time. He said, if you're going to make a joke and it's going to be at somebody's expense, always do it in private. And if it's not at their expense, do it in public. And I thought that was great advice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He seems wise. Yeah, that is good advice. Yeah, I think making jokes at your own expense is probably fair game. As long it's almost like an interview question. If you're making fun of and I do this on stand up, like when I'm adjusting to America. Now I've been here for 30 years, so I can make fun of the old Peter, who didn't know these basic cultural things that every American would know. But I can, feel all the more comfortable making jokes like that now because it was Peter in his 20s versus Peter in his early 50s. So yeah, if you're separated by time, then it's all the easier to make fun of yourself, and that can be about an HR thing as well. So sometimes when I was in house and I talk about an employee relations situation, I might empathize with the manager. I'd be like, oh, when I was a first time manager, I messed this up so much. And I'd make a self deprecating story, maybe a funny one about how I had done it wrong. And then that kind of, it repositions me not so much as the teacher, but as the partner. And then I can, advise them on what to do so they don't make the mistakes I made, addressing this issue with maybe an employee on their team that they're not quite seeing eye to eye with.
You mentioned earlier using humor as a way of developing trust between yourself and whoever you're speaking to, your colleague in this case. I'd be curious just to hear from you. I mean, do you have any examples of perhaps a time that you as an HR professional are trying to develop trust with another leader in your organization, and how you might use humor in that moment to do it?
So the example I just gave, would work, where you're kind of making fun of the old Peter, the less wise, sophisticated Peter, and kind of reframing yourself as this omniscient HR guru who's going to tell them how to lead a team, and humanizing yourself as somebody who's hoping that you, the manager client, will not benefit from the past Peter's screw ups. So I think that could be helpful. And then also just there's a lot of HR buzzwords and terminology out there. So it can be kind of disarming to maybe check yourself if you're using some crazy ridiculous modern term like talent density or spiky skill sets or whatever, and then just check yourself. Actually, let's talk English for a second. Here's what I actually mean by that, and that can be a bit more humanizing and connecting as well, where you check yourself on the HR crazy terminology that can be out of hand at times.
Yeah. And do you think I mean, certainly there are times when humor is not the right fit for whatever it is you're dealing with in the moment. It could be because it's a very serious
Sure.
situation, or because the person you're interacting with isn't in the mood to hear a joke. But have you ever seen mistakes made where somebody's tried injecting humor into a situation at work and it's just gone the wrong way?
I have. Yeah, that could be pretty cringy. Yeah, I think that reading the room is kind of key always. So yeah, to your point, if the company's in trouble and you're having meetings about potential layoffs or whatever, then ixnay on the Umer or whatever the Pig Latin is for that. But yeah, I think it's always important to read the room. And yeah, I don't want to embarrass anybody, or I guess I could remove the names, but yeah, Yeah, injecting humor when the moment isn't quite there, or injecting it the wrong way, where you are making fun of somebody or the company or yourself to excess. I'm picturing it's fiction versus reality, but I'm picturing a couple of times in The Office where Michael, was self-deprecating himself and went too far, where he starts bringing up stories about how he was, a friendless child or whatever, and then all of a sudden you go from self-deprecation to actually really feeling bad for the guy, and it's like, an awkward moment. So yeah, you don't want to ruin your reputation with too much self-deprecation. It should always be a light touch.
Yeah. And I've also seen too in employee relations situations where it's like jokes gone wrong.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, there's an investigation going on. Typically, not HR is the one being investigated. They're doing the investigating in those moments. But um, unfortunately, I think some people can take humor the wrong way at work as well. And then it just gets them into a little bit of trouble.
It's true. Yeah, that's definitely the worst case scenario, and why people fear, humor in general, in the workplace, because they think, oh, I can't say anything, kind of thing. But you normally can, make fun of a situation lightly, or make fun of yourself, or overblown, terminology. It doesn't have to be overblown HR terminology. It could be in any department that's maybe just gotten a little bit, off the rails in terms of developing their own vernacular, and nobody understands what they're saying anymore. So there's things where you're unlikely to offend a person or group, and those it's just a situation you have to, be mindful of, and maybe it's kind of easier said than done. But one encouraging thing is that, on those open mic nights, the funny HR people nights, nobody's getting offended, and people are telling wild and crazy stories, and it's maybe it's harder to mess up in a way that puts yourself at risk or results in an investigation, than you might think, as long as you kind of remember the rules of thumb of, not making fun of any person or group, or if you do, make it be yourself, and in a light way, and just use good sense.
Yeah, good sense is key, I'd
Yeah,
say.
yeah,
So, let's say you're an HR professional and you are working within a culture that maybe could use an injection of humor, right? It's too serious. People are a bit, you know, um, e- quiet or not engaging or not
yeah.
social or whatever it is. It's just not a very fun environment. What would you recommend they do to work with their leadership to bring more humor into the workplace and really build part of their culture around that?
Yeah, I mean, I think cultures are tricky to shift. So I'll say, thing one is, um, you know, when I do culture projects, which is my other kind of day job in addition to the executive search, it's hard to shift any culture, and it's the more kind of larger the company is, and the more entrenched behaviors are, the harder it is. So while I love a good challenge, and if there's any prospects on the audience, count me in for a challenge. But the more fun projects are the ones where it's kind of a nascent culture. Maybe they're just a younger company, still kind of figuring things out, and kind of open as opposed to closed. Those are a lot of fun to work with in general, in terms of, getting to their correct values, and, putting infrastructure in place so people see that messaging, or, feel that messaging on a daily basis. So anyway, that's just about the difficulty of changing cultures in general once they're up and running. So, with respect to adding more humor, it may not be particularly welcome. You kind of have to have all of the leadership on board, and if they're not already doing it, then maybe they don't want it. So, and one personal story. which had some success, but I don't think I changed the culture, was when I was working at Bloomberg Financial Markets, at Mike Bloomberg's company, like 20 years ago. And it could be a little bit humorless, I found, because you just like you're getting hammered kind of all day long with the latest quotes and market trends. And if the markets are open, chances are there's way too many numbers about to be joking around. But I still loved humor back then. So I used to insert it into kind of dry content, which was benefits related. I was like overseeing some benefit plan rollouts. So I would add humor to those enrollment sessions or education sessions, because, benefits isn't the most exciting of topics. So there was one session down in their DC office, a small office, lots of journalists. And this one woman kept asking questions on a certain theme. And now, for context, back then, I don't think it's the same now, I'd have to check, but Bloomberg was really anti-boomerang employees. It was seen as a sign of disloyalty to ever leave.
Well,
So if you left, you could not come back. And Mike was proud of this. He put it in his old, Bloomberg by Bloomberg, his biography, document came out maybe 20 years ago as well. Anyway, so this one woman in the DC retirement plan session was asking these questions that were around the theme of what happens after I leave. So also, hand goes up. So Peter, can you continue to adjust the investment mix after you leave? It's for the existing dollars versus any new money going in, obviously. But yeah, sure you can. And then, and what happens to, rolling this over elsewhere after I leave kind of thing. So anyway, after the fourth question about leaving, which again was this taboo topic at the organization, I responded with, at this point, I'd just be happy if you made it to the end of the workshop, well bent on leaving the organization. So that got a very good laugh because it was a taboo topic and because there was definitely a pattern to her questions. So anyway, that was a fun moment, and it inspired me to pitch doing some humor at Bloomberg on the airwaves. And I was able to get on the weekends when the market was closed and do this kind of finance section, which was about kind of personal finance, not the stuff that would require me to be licensed with, stockbroker, Series 7, Series 63 or whatever, but just lighter stuff about how to make the most of your benefit plans. I consider that a win that I got to do a little bit of work on the radio, WBBR, AM 1130, but it was a small little thing, Jocelyn. I don't think the culture, was particularly humor oriented then, despite my best efforts, or is now. I think you have to be open to it, and we probably have a whole other conversation about if you have established that they're open to it, how do you, slowly but surely weave it in. But maybe having your HR leader attend funny HR people night might be a good start.
Yeah, absolutely. I love how you kind of took what could be some pretty boring topics and just made them fun for people. So it just kind of goes to show that even if your culture isn't ready for that or your leaders aren't ready, it doesn't mean that you still can't be some form of a change agent yourself.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate it. We didn't even get to dig into all of your experience with culture and with headhunting and recruitment. And hopefully, I have an opportunity to have you on the show again one day, Peter. Where can people find you?
Well, I'd love to come back, Jocelyn. That sounds like a great idea to me. We could talk about HR headhunting and some of the tips and tricks I might have for candidates out there, because it's a bit of a tough market. So people could find me on LinkedIn. That's definitely my biggest social media channel. Peter Phelan, the Culture Doctor, as a name I have on there as well. And then Values Culture is my company, so you can check out valuesculture.com. And I would also encourage people who might be in the tri-state area, especially because most of our 20 or so sessions have been there, the New York City tri-state area, to check out funnyhrpeople.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody listening today. You can catch this and all of our podcasts anywhere you get your podcasts. Until next time.